and so her name is blessed.
Stop this at once! What have you done?
I've blessed the naming of a child.
Stubborn woman, you call that curse a child? What did she tell you about his birth, outcast? Answer!
I've done only what you asked.
To raise it, yes. We said nothing of love.
Enough.
And you, blessing its name like it was one
I
of
know
the
my
Nora,
duty
one
to
of the
them.
tribe.
And to you.
Without consultation.
I'm here.
Did all year, did
And wherever you go, I will follow.
Hey gamers, Blindy here. It's August 2024, and I recently finished playing Horizon Zero Dawn Complete Edition on my Steam Deck. Now, when this game first came out, I'll be completely honest, I had never heard of it. It was a period of time that I had been gaming much more casually than I am now. Realistically, I was probably playing Minecraft or Stardew Valley, and really, that was pretty much it. And when I was gaming, it was on my computer, so a PlayStation 4 exclusive such as Horizon Zero Dawn definitely didn't make it onto my radar. But that changed a few years ago when Horizon Forbidden West released. By that time, I was much more into gaming, and Horizon Forbidden West caught my attention. It had a really cool concept, and the gameplay looked like something I would enjoy quite a bit. Then I found out it was a sequel to a previous game, so I ended up purchasing Zero Dawn on Steam, and it sat in my Steam library for a couple of years now. Now, I had high hopes for this game. I really did. There was a bit of hype surrounding the series, and the idea of being in the future, but living primitively in a world of metal creatures, it all looked intriguing, to say the least. But, would it live up to the hype? Could it deliver on an experience that I was looking for, but hadn't found in a long time? Was I putting too much into what I was hoping out of this game? Probably. Guerrilla Games really took a chance with this game, though. You might be familiar with them in their previous game franchise, Killzone, which doesn't appear that it's going to be revived anytime soon, unfortunately, for all of you fans of this series. And Guerrilla is part of the entire PlayStation Studios ecosystem, so their games get priority for the PlayStation systems over others. But that doesn't mean that they don't exist on other systems. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, I played this on a Steam Deck. Mine is an original LCD version, and I was able to crank out around an hour and a half of game time per session. But the PC won't be the only system to get a hold of a Horizon game. Soon, the Nintendo Switch will be able to get LEGO Horizon Adventures, which appears to be a slightly modified version of Zero Dawn, ideal for the LEGO world. At least you'll be able to get this game quite affordably if you're looking to buy it for yourself. Standard price for this game is $64.99 Canadian, but keep your eyes open and you'll be able to snag this game for 75% off, so just over $16. So keep in mind, if you're installing this game, you'll need a ton of space for it. Steam recommends you have at least 100 gigs of space available to install this, and my system shows 72.21 gigs for mine. Even though the game can be purchased cheap and is from a reputable studio from a major publisher, this game isn't flawless, at least on the Steam Deck. It is verified, which is great. I never had any issues related to reading the text, button mapping, resolutions, or anything like that, but I did have some serious hiccups when it came to the game's performance. First off, I noticed the game had some significantly noticeable frame rate lag in places. Usually it wasn't during combat, and often it was during cutscenes, so fortunately it didn't affect the gameplay too often, but it was definitely present. On several occasions, the game crashed on me, sending me back to the desktop. I play on desktop mode. And once I had the game crash so hard that my Steam Deck quit responding to any input, forcing me to reinstall SteamOS. It was a complete hassle. Not only that, when I returned to the game and launched one of my save files, it didn't match the save the metadata said I was at. The save was corrupted to a previous save, which meant I lost about 3 hours worth of game time, and all my previous save files weren't accurate to where it said the saves were at. So not a great time, but I had several save files on the go, so it definitely could have been worse. I'm not sure if I was one of the rare people to encounter these issues or if it was more common than I would expect, but let me be honest. For this review, I am reviewing this game as the game is, not as it performed on my Steam Deck. And it appears that others like the game for what it is as well. It scores an 84 on Metacritic and 87% approval on Steam with over 88,000 reviews. And before we talk about Aloy and the world of metal creatures, let me add in that this game is rated a T for teen by the ESRB. There's blood, drug references, language, mild sexual themes, and violence, but none of those being too offensive from my point of view. As I start talking about the story, the gameplay, and more, I will give you this warning now. I will do my best not to talk about anything that will spoil too much of the story, but I won't guarantee anything. To understand what is happening and how the game works, of course, I have to talk about some of the story. So I will give you a warning now that, though I've done my best to reduce the amount of details that might spoil the story, there might be potential spoilers ahead. You start the game learning that Aloy has been outcast from her tribe, though things don't seem quite right. You live primitively with clans living in simplified villages, dirt roads, and your main weapon being a bow and arrow. But despite living primitively, the world seems more advanced than it should be. Various creatures roam the world. Some of them are familiar, like foxes, turkeys, and boars, but most others are not. These metal creatures typically stick together like herds, and sometimes their forms look like animals we should already be familiar with. Sawtooths look like saber-toothed tigers, Watchers look like velociraptors, Snapmaws look like alligators. You get the idea. Instead of being squishy targets that you can hit just about anywhere, you have to be a bit more focused on their weaknesses, and you better be ready to fight, because like the movies, once any of these creatures see you, they all want you dead. But before I get into the combat, and before I get too far ahead of myself, let's finish talking about Aloy's story. Being banished from her tribe when she was a baby, her guardian, Rost, raises her, trains her to survive, and learn how to overcome all of her challenges. He tells her of her one opportunity to be reassimilated into the tribe, a competition that she can complete to be accepted once again. Without getting into too much detail at this point, Aloy completes the competition, earns the right to join the tribe, but her only concern is to find out information about her mother. She is entitled the right of Seeker, an individual that has freedom to move about the world to investigate what is necessary to bring answers for her. And from here, the game kicks off into your exploration of the world, experiencing all the challenges and investigating the hidden secrets that lead to more than just Aloy finding out about who her mother is and where she came from. As you've been watching for the past several minutes, this game is controlled like many other games by PlayStation of this era. It's a third-person, over-the-shoulder action game. And if you like game comparisons, well, let's do a few of those. The overall controls are similar to the Tomb Raider reboots, or maybe Uncharted, God of War, and, like I said before, many other PlayStation games at this time. The third-person, over-the-shoulder style of gameplay was their bread and butter, and some might claim it still is. It works for them, and we got some great games from that style of gameplay. Not only are the controls similar to Tomb Raider, but some of your movements are similar too. You can slide down ropes using a bow/spear, and the general usage of a bow and arrow as your primary weapon lends to that characterization as well. There are some stealthier parts of the game, mostly hiding in tall grass, similar to games like A Plague Tale games, where hiding in the grass usually completely prevents you from being seen. Weapon selections are similar to this game as well, with the use of a selection wheel. Conversational dialogues are controlled using a dialogue wheel, like you might find in the Mass Effect games. Save points are scattered around the map and activated by lighting a fire, similar, though not exactly, to a Souls game. And the world map felt quite a bit like the Assassin's Creed games, where there's a ton of stuff to explore on the map, and one by one, you try to clear them all out. And if you're the type of person to go exploring on your own, there's probably more out there to find that isn't on the map. But that all being said, I think the game that brings the closest experience to this is actually Hogwarts Legacy. It's funny because as I was playing this, my wife was playing Hogwarts Legacy and I could see a lot of similarities as I watched what she did compared to what I was doing. She was able to reveal secrets using her wand, whereas I used a focus to do the same. We snuck around to instantly kill enemies, fast traveled across a large map to clear a whole bunch of side quests. We had various mounts to travel across the world quickly, all in a third-person over-the-shoulder style gameplay. Sure, it's not an exact replica, but the similarities are curious. Like many games of this style, you'll have a set of skills that you're able to upgrade as you level up. It's not quite an RPG-style upgrading system in that you're not putting points into traits. Rather, you'll learn new skills that can be helpful in your journeys. So things like healing your mount or gaining the ability to jump off your mount to attack, skills which take points you gain to learn those abilities. And when you have an open world game like this one, you're eventually going to want to travel quickly from one location to another one far away. There is a fast travel system, but they use items to do so. Early on, I didn't worry about it because I was exploring quite a lot. So I just rode a strider or a charger or whatever else to go where I needed to go. Later in the game, I had most of the map cleared out, so I was just focusing on the main quests, so I started using my travel packs more at that time. And I had plenty of them, way more than I needed, and you could buy them fairly easily from merchants, and for those of you that like to travel a lot, there's a travel pack that is a permanent item in your inventory, so you don't have to worry about the consumable version of them. This game has some pretty cool game-specific mechanics to it, one of them being the use of the focus. It's a pretty major plot point, but also a significant item you can use in the game. It allows you to see objects clearly, regardless of the vegetation, walls, hills, and everything else that might be in the way. It helps you reconstruct scenes from the past, follow tracks, and probably more. For the most part, I really liked using the focus to be able to identify enemies before I engaged them. But the real star feature of this game has to be the override ability. As you travel, you will visit various cauldrons, large underground bunkers holding imposing dangers, but great rewards as well. Consider them boss fights, and when you override the cauldron, you gain the ability to override certain machines, and it's this ability that makes the game way more exciting to play. First of all, you can only override enemies that you've unlocked override abilities for. And you can only override enemies that aren't actively searching for you. When you get close enough, you press and hold the override button, Y on the Steam Deck, and in a few seconds, that machine becomes friendly, meaning it won't do any harm to you, but it'll likely go berserk against the rest of the herd, which makes your life easier. It's also how you gain mounts, and generally makes your travels safer. You can take down a herd of powerful machines just by turning one against the rest of them. And on top of that, the one you turn tends to be more powerful than the other enemies, so it's often able to take down multiple machines on its own before it takes too much damage. One of your skills even makes this easier too. You can learn to whistle, which alerts one of the closest machines, making it curious to check out where the sound came from. Assuming you're hidden in grass, you just have to wait for it to approach, then override it once it gets within range. And beyond overtaking enemies, the other thing you could do is override tall necks, tall giraffe-like machines that aren't aggressive, but once overridden, provide a scan of the local area, clearing out some of the map's fog and revealing most of the discoverables in the proximity on your map. While you'll be able to override some of the machines, in reality, you'll be fighting them most of the time. But is the combat any good? Well, yes, but it's quirky. On the Steam Deck, there is a touchpad, which is generally great for shooting games. But to be honest, in third-person action games, I've tended to use the right stick to aim. And for the most part, it was decent. But fine-tuning was really challenging at times. Getting precise shots for targets far away was sometimes downright infuriating as your cursor bounces back and forth. To try to get around this issue, the game provides you with a couple upgrades where you can slow down time as you aim, which is okay, I guess. but it was something that I didn't use a whole lot. And when you're fighting multiple enemies, you don't have an option to lock onto an enemy, which can be a bit of a pain trying to figure out which one you've been focusing your damage on, and even more so when that enemy zooms past you, but you can only turn around at the speed of your right stick's turning speed. And man, another thing that seemed insignificant until it wasn't, was that you're not able to look directly overhead. You can literally die from an enemy right above you and not do anything about it. A storm bird I was fighting did just that to me, and I wasn't too thrilled dying instantly to an enemy I couldn't see. That all said, I still like the combat. You can try multiple things, such as sneaking around in grass, attempting to get close, or you could try to snipe with long-range arrows, or fight close with fast shooting arrows and melee combat, or use traps, or numerous other ways. If this game was only bows and arrows, it would get boring exceptionally quickly. But because you could try various strategies, use different type of weapons, and be as aggressive as you want to be, this game really makes combat a lot of fun once you find a strategy that works for you. Now again, this is an open world game, and Horizon Zero Dawn has a lot of features you'll find in other open world games. There are a ton of items that you'll be able to pick up in the world, but you also have a carry capacity, because of course. So you'll be tempted to pick up a lot of stuff, especially early on, because you want to be able to have those items for when you need them. Then you start crafting and realize you don't need 2/3 of the items you picked up. It'll take some time to figure out what is useful and what isn't. At least there aren't many completely useless items. It depends on what weapon loadout you're sporting and which arrows you tend to use that kind of determine which items you want to pick up or leave behind. Unfortunately, the items don't do a great job in their descriptions, so you'll have to figure out what they do in either the crafting menu, not the inventory menu, or knowing through experience. And this took me a while to figure out on my own, but there's a green bar below your health bar, and that is the amount of healing herbs that you have. It fills up as you pick up healing herbs in the wild, and gets used up as you press up on the directional pad. It's really nice in that it only heals as much as you need. If you need 3 health points, it will only use 3 health points worth of your healing herbs. You could also have health potions that are one-time use and heal a certain number of hit points. So now that I mentioned potions, let's talk about crafting. There is a minimal amount of crafting in this game for the most part. Most of your crafting will be arrows, generally on the fly as you're fighting. I'm not sure how that works in reality, but it's a good thing we're not gaming in a realistic world. You can hold the button for your arrows, and while in that menu, you can hold A for the Steam Deck to craft more arrows. You can also craft in the menu screen, which is a bit weird. It's weird because you have an inventory screen as well, which is similar to the crafting screen, but they're not the same screen. So if you are in your inventory screen and you come across an item that you don't know exactly what it crafts into, you'll have to go into the crafting screen and find the resulting item to know what the crafting item could be used for. It would have been nice for them to fit those screens together, but I'm assuming there was a practical reason why they chose to do it this way. The menu system could have been a little easier to navigate too, especially the quest screen. There are 10 different sub-menus for the quest screen, and I can understand to an extent separating some of them out. 10 is a lot, especially when you have only one active quest at a time. Once I understood the types of quests and how important they all were, it was easier to read, but it felt a little overwhelming at times. Generally, I really liked the map, but on the flip side, the real-world navigating was a bit difficult. So you have a compass at the top of the screen that shows your nearby locations and your quest marker, but it can be annoying spinning around in circles trying to find a marker. And sometimes your quest marker will show up in the world with the number of steps it takes to reach it, which is great, but sometimes that marker just disappears, which is not great. But there's a lot to explore, which is one of the things I loved most about this game. I had the freedom to go pretty much wherever I wanted, while being able to move around relatively safely in any area at any level by killing, sneaking, or flying by on a strider. There's a ton to find, and probably way too much story wrapped in these found locations. If you're familiar with the Batman Arkham games, you'll understand about the stories that are revealed when you find items. But there are a lot in this game. There are the ones you can find on the maps, over 50 of them, as well as well over 100 data points you can scan. And those are all hidden in the world. It's a bit overwhelming, to be honest. I like that you don't have to be any particular level to explore, but the game felt much more fun as I progressed and became stronger. You're more able to fight, and if you've cleared out more cauldrons, you're able to override more machines, which is always fun to do. And while you're exploring, you'll be climbing various cliffs. Like similar games, you'll find white marks on edges that you can grab, but in this game, the color difference isn't nearly as stark, so you might find yourself walking right past something that can start your climb. And this game doesn't always hold your hand as you're climbing, as I've fallen many times trying to make a jump that didn't quite go the way I expected it to. So that's the general overview of the gameplay. Before I wrap things up, I'll give you some of my personal thoughts about this game. Before I get started, I'll let you know that this was my first time playing this game. I hadn't played Forbidden West either, though I'm very interested in playing it sometime in the future. And How Long to Beat has this game at 29.5 hours to play the main game for the complete edition. I took 65 hours to play this game, but I marked mine as a completionist run. I lit all the fires I could find, found all the collectibles, overrode all the tall necks, and cleared all the cauldrons. I didn't do all of the side quests, nor did I go into the Frozen Wilds expansion, though I still want to do that. Now, this was a game that I had really high hopes for. I was really intrigued by the imagination of this world, having machine versions of animals inhabiting a futuristic world, even as the lives of humans reverted to a more primitive state. It looked really cool, the colors in the world are vibrant, and the combat looked fun. It had a bunch of things that I was really interested in. But I felt the game started a little slowly. It took some time to figure out exactly what all the items do, how to navigate through the menus, and effective ways to stay alive while fighting machines. It took several hours to get through those, but once I figured out all those details, the game really started to click for me. After that point, the only times I died was when I was facing a challenging boss or falling to my death because I didn't grab a ledge I was jumping to. So, if you're new to this game, I urge you to get through the early part. It isn't particularly beginner friendly, but once you're past the learning curve, this game really takes off. Like I mentioned earlier, there are lots of ways to be successful, which I think makes this a really strong game. Being able to fight or sneak or avoid danger altogether, you have various ways to feel rewarded for doing something successfully. You're not going to play a game if you don't feel rewarded, and I think this game gives gamers lots of dopamine hits. Especially when you're able to use those skills to be able to take down an enemy that's much more powerful than you. An enemy that you shouldn't be able to take on, but you do anyway. It may be a long fight, but at the end, that relief and satisfaction is a great motivator to keep going. But sometimes you end up using cheese strats against an enemy. Not nearly as rewarding though. You may stay out of reach and rain arrows down from above, or maybe you're playing with the extent of the maximum roaming range of a machine. But there are a few ways to cheese some enemies. I didn't like using these strats, but they helped me progress when I was struggling, so I'm not going to complain too much. But it goes both ways as well. Sometimes you'll fight an enemy and get completely destroyed, getting one shot from 100 to 0 before you had a chance to realize you were in danger. So, you know what? I'm going to use my cheese strat, and I'll be happy that I did. And visually, this game is mostly really good looking. Mostly. There's some weird stuff though. One of the first instances is during some cutscenes early on. The hair of the character is bouncing irrationally. It's really distracting. And occasionally you'll find objects that are floating. Sometimes it's in the environment like a set of rocks or a dead body. But basically not every little part of the map was completely ironed out. I don't hold it against the game or the development team at all. It's just a minor quirk. And the worst is probably the day-night transitions. It changes from one to the other within about 5 seconds, which can be an abrupt transition. Again, I'm not going to hold it against the game, it's just a small oddity. And when it comes to the sounds, the game has decent music and sounds, but nothing that really caught my attention. And I think that pretty much wraps up my overall impression of the game. Apparently, I had a lot to talk about. So let's wrap this up with a couple burning questions. Would I recommend this game? For the most part, I certainly would recommend this game. I think it has some issues that aren't perfect, but they are far from detrimental and don't take away from the experience much at all. I would have liked it to be a bit friendlier at the beginning so that there wasn't as much figuring out things on your own, but maybe it was just me. It was a really fun experience. Like I said, it is a 30-hour game and I put in 65. As the game progressed, I wanted to do more, experience all the challenges, and try to clear the map. I tackled a bunch of the side quests, and I found that several of my sessions lasted over 2 hours, which is unusual for me. Once I was involved in the story, I was really enjoying my time, and I didn't feel the urge to put the game down. And this game has some flexibility right at the beginning too. There are 6 difficulties. I chose hard, which was 4 out of 6. But if you're wanting to experience just the story, the game has a story mode that focuses on the story and minimizes the combat. So you can play this game in various different ways and still have a great time. And is this game replayable? Yeah, it is. Again, the exploration is a lot of fun. Even without a goal in mind, you can wander aimlessly and still find things to do. There are a bunch of side quests of find and tackle. You can try to collect all the collectibles and data points if you're looking for more to find. You can challenge different enemy sites in different ways. You can try different loadouts and see how the different weapons work well together. There's a lot to do and you can spend quite a lot of hours playing the game even after you've beaten it. And what would I score this game? It's strange because as I look back on this review and the number of issues I laid out, I think I come to a conclusion that I rationally shouldn't. I'm going to give this game a 9 out of 9. That's how much I enjoyed this game. Most games I finish the campaign and I'm done. I do what it takes to complete the game and I'm generally satisfied there. But with this game, I dumped way more hours into it than I needed to. I know I laid out a bunch of reasons why this game isn't perfect, and to be honest, this game is far from perfect. But as I look back, think about how much I enjoyed it compared to how much I wish was changed, and I think that this game is better than a 9 out of 10, which leaves me one way to go. So 9 out of 9 in this case is not a perfect game, but it's pretty darn close. It'll be one I can easily see coming back to and spending just as many hours in the second or third time around. I said that I had high hopes for this game. I was wary at the beginning, but as this game moved along, it definitely fulfilled those hopes. I'm glad I played it. I encourage you to play it if you're at all interested in this game. Alright, before I go, I'll let you have a brief glimpse at the final boss fight.
My way's clear.
The Deathbringer fall.
And that's my review of Horizon Zero Dawn. Let me know, was I wrong? Was I fair? Leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And here is where I would thank all of my Patreon supporters if I had a Patreon page. But I don't, so I won't. Instead, if you want to chat games with me, come join me on Discord. I want to know what game review you just watched, or which game you're playing, or maybe even listen to your game review suggestions. Alright, let's get out of here. Thank you for watching this video, because without you, I'm just a weirdo talking into a microphone. Like the video if you enjoyed it, and maybe tap that subscribe button if you loved it. At the time of this recording, I have 12 subscribers, and I'd like to work my way toward 25 subs, so I would love to have your support. Thank you again, and I hope you all have a wonderful day, play some games, and I'll see you in the next review. Take care.